Okay, grade 8, welcome to Tuesday. Mr. McDonald, myself, is not here. I'm still in Toronto, enjoying my free concert at Fleetwood Mac, so unfortunately you have to stay here and do math. But that's okay, because I know you're excellent for Mr. Bassett, and you guys are going to be the best students he's ever had. So as we go through these two show you knows, because he's distributed them to you already, and if he hasn't, he's going to press pause and give them out to you. So everyone has this sheet right now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the first two questions, the show you knows. I'd like you all to copy them down exactly as I show you how to do them. And then you'll use these two show you knows as a guide to help you do the rest of the questions. So, Mr. Bassett, if you want to pause this after I finish one of the questions, that way you can give some time to copy it down, that would be great. Some of them might need the time, some of them might not. So the first question we have here is 7 times a half minus 2 divided by 3/5. So with this question, we're really dealing with what we call a BeDMAS question, or an order of operations. So if I take my highlighter here, I have 1, I have 2, I have 3 operations in the whole thing. Now what BeDMAS says is BeDMAS says there are actually, well, in grade 8, there's only 3 steps. The first step is brackets, and brackets means do this before all other operations. The second step is actually division and multiplication, not division first, then multiplication, but all division and multiplication in the order you see them from left to right. So in this case, the first thing I see is multiplication, so I will do that before I will do the division. I do multiplication first, then division. It's not division first, then multiplication. It's the order that you see them in left to right. And of course, the third one would be addition, subtraction. So make sure you follow your BeDMAS. And if you keep forgetting, write it down. There's 3 steps. Step 1, step 2, step 3. The E you'll learn in grade 9 a little bit more when you do exponents. But for grade 7 and 8 math, you don't really use exponents very much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 7 times a half. And I know that if I have 7, sometimes it's easier for students to think of it as being 7 over 1. Because then when they multiply it out, they get 7 over 2. And usually they put it right back to mixed. But for the purposes of BeDMAS questions, what I recommend you do is don't change that to 3.5. Keep it as 7.5, or 7.5, sorry. And just bring down the rest right underneath where it was. So all of this comes right down here. So all I've simplified is this. And it's become 7/2, and then the rest, take away 2 divided by 3/5 stays the same. Now the next thing I'm going to do is the division. And remember, for division, the easiest thing to do is think of mixed fractions again as being 2 over 1, or the whole number over 1. Change the division to multiplication and use what we call the reciprocal of the second fraction. So the reciprocal is what we really call the flip of the second. And so we're really going to do 2 over 1 times 10 or times 5 over 3, which is going to be 10 over 3. Now notice I'm not changing it to mixed yet. The rest of this comes right down here. So it's 7 over 2, take away 10 over 3. Now I didn't change the order. I do not have this. You can't put this 7 over 2 over here because it doesn't work. You must keep the order in which it was given to you. So the 7 over 2 is first, and now 2 divided by 3/5 becomes this. I'm going to clean this up just a little bit here, just because these are maybe a little confusing for some people. Okay, so I'll just clean that up. So what we have now, oops, there we go, is this. And now we have our last operation, which is subtraction. And we know that with subtraction, we need a common denominator. In this case, we're going to take 6. The equivalent fraction to 7/2 is going to be 21 over 6. And the equivalent fraction to 10/3 as a fraction over 6 is going to be 26. Now, I want everyone to write this step down. The rule for subtracting fractions is keep your denominator and subtract your numerator. So 21 take away 20 is going to give you a final answer of 1/6. Okay? So you can press pause there if you want to copy that down. First one I did was this, and I got this answer. Second one I did was this, and I got this answer. And then I subtracted the 2 because that was the last thing I had to do by finding equivalent fractions. Subtracting the numerator, keeping the denominator, my final answer was 1/6. A lot of work goes into that, a lot of organizing. It's very important that you keep your organization good, because if you're one of those people who can't organize their BeDMAS questions, these become almost impossible to do. Okay. Question 2. Again, we have 1 2, 3 operations. So the first operation I'm going to do is the brackets. So I'm really going to solve the brackets and then bring everything down. So it's 1/2 plus a quarter, so I know I need a common denominator. Common denominator is 4. It'll be 2 quarters plus 1 quarter, which is going to be 3 quarters. So the rest of this expression is going to come down. The only difference is these brackets are now going to be represented with 3 quarters. And the rest comes down. So now I have 3 over 2 divided by 3 over 4 divided by 3 over 4 again. So now I just have 2 divisions left. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep the first fraction, change to multiplication and use the reciprocal. And I'm going to solve this using cross reduction. So 3 over 3 is going to become 1 over 1. 4 over 2 is going to become 2 over 1. And when I multiply that out, this whole division statement is going to just become 2 over 1 or just 2. Okay? Now this part here, which I haven't done yet, comes straight down and it becomes 2 divided between 3 quarters. So now 2, we want to think of our whole numbers as being over 1. Change our division to multiplication and use the reciprocal. So once we keep change flip, we end up with 8 over 3, which is improper, so we want to change that to mixed, which is 2 and 2/3. Okay, so we'll go back in time and look at this. Let's go back in time and look here. So let's look at the beginning. Oh, that's not what I wanted. There we go. So the first thing I did was I did the addition of brackets. So 1/2 plus 1 quarter, and I got 3 quarters. So then I wrote down the rest of the statement, which was 3 over 2 divided by this new answer, 3 quarters, divided by 3 quarters. I then took my 3 over 2 and multiplied it by the reciprocal of 3 quarters, which was 4 over 3. I cross-reduced to end up with a final answer of 2. And then 2 divided by 3 quarters became 2 over 1, which is what 2 was, multiplied by the reciprocal of 3 quarters. And I worked that out. I got 8 over 3. I've got to scroll down a little bit more. And 8 over 3 as a mixed fraction is 2 and 2/3. Now our last question, C, is this one, and it has a subtraction, it has a multiplication, and it has brackets that have subtraction in it. So of those 3 operations, the first one I'm going to do is the brackets, because that's my B in BeDMAS. So I'm going to find my common denominator, I'm going to make my equivalent fractions, and I'm going to subtract them to become 5/8. Now the rest of this right here, that's just going to come straight down. So it's going to become 2 1/4, take away 1/2, multiplied by 5/8. So now I have 2 operations left. The next one I'm going to do is right here. So 1/2 times 5/8 is going to be 5 over 16, because I'm just going to multiply the numerators and multiply the denominators. And remember, this part here doesn't go at the end. It goes straight down from where it was. We don't change the order at all. So now after I do the 1/2 times 5/8 and get 5/16, I'm going to have 2 1/4, and my last operation is take away that 5/16. So don't forget, when you subtract, when you have a mixed fraction, it's always easiest to change them to improper. And once you have it improper, find your common denominator, in this case 16 again. I multiplied by 4 to get 16, so multiply by 4 here to get 36. Write down 36, take away 5, because you're going to subtract your numerators and keep your denominator. I get 31/16. Anytime around now, press pause would be good, because there's a lot of work here. And my final answer will be 1 and 15/16. Okay, so if you want to press pause to copy that down, you can. Obviously, that would be a good idea. If you want to go back, you can watch it again. All right, so that's how you do your BeDMAS questions. Make sure the keys to success here is make sure when you simplify one part, whatever part that is, it goes directly underneath it and the rest comes down on top of it. You shouldn't be putting all your work all over the place. Keep it nice and organized as best you can, and hopefully you'll be able to get the answer. Now the second show you know, it says Ron earns $15 an hour as a security guard. For all the time he works above 35 hours a week, he earns a time and a third, which means he not only gets his $15, but he gets a third more an hour. So how much does Ron earn for working 41 hours? So this is really an interesting BeDMAS question. So the first part, he gets $15 an hour times the first 35 hours he worked. So we're going to write that down as being $15 an hour for 35 hours. And we have to do a quick computation. So if he worked 41 hours a week, that means he worked 6 extra hours. So the hours that he earned, those 6 extra hours, he's going to get paid 1 1/3 times the $15. He's going to get that much per hour. So 1 1/3 times the $15 an hour he normally makes. That's a third more than he normally makes, multiplied by the 6 hours of extra time he worked, because he worked 35 hours for normal time and those 6 extra hours, which gets paid for that. So now we're going to simplify this. So we're just going to do our brackets first. So for that $15 an hour for the 1 1/3, every hour he works, we're going to change this to this and this to this. That gives me 60 over 3, which means he makes $20 an hour for every overtime hour he works. So when I simplify this, it's going to look like this. Notice how I didn't change any order. Everything is where it was. So he's making $15 an hour for the first 35 hours. And that 1 1/3 times he makes a normal hour is going to be $20 an hour times the $6 or 6 hours of extra work he used. So 35 times 15, pull up the calculator. 35 times 15, he makes $525 for his regular hours, plus he's going to make another $120 for those overtime hours. So altogether, when I combine his regular hours with his 6 hours of overtime, he makes $645 that week.